thanks so much for being here. My name is Kat and I make houseplant videos here on Good and Planty. If you just happen to absolutely love this video, please consider liking it, commenting, subscribing, or following me on Instagram. All of these things help me grow my channel like a plant. Today, we are going to be talking all about the dracaena genus, how to take care of it, and also some common issues you might come across when you are taking care of one. This will include water, light, soil, repotting, humidity, temperature, and fertilizer, so stay tuned. As always, I'm gonna pop time codes on the screen if you wanna jump to the part you're most interested in, and almost all of the products I'm gonna talk about today are linked down below in my Amazon shop, which you will find in my description box. Before we jump into it, I wanna give a huge thank you to today's sponsor, Skillshare. You may know Skillshare for classes in photography, film, video editing. I've talked a lot about Skillshare before, but you may not know that Skillshare has hundreds of career-focused classes too. Traditional jobs don't work for everyone. I can really speak to that. So learning how to make a career that works for you is really one of my biggest goals in 2023. Obviously, my YouTube channel, Good and Planty, is a huge part of that, of working for myself, of building something I'm really proud of. And time management, goal setting, marketing, all of those are skills that help me get to where I am today. And luckily, these are also skills available for you on Skillshare. Right now, I'm working on the class Personal and Lifestyle Branding, Building Your Story by Kate Ahrens, the founder of Wit and Delight. This class broke down some really important key points for me and also came with worksheets so that I can kind of apply the knowledge to Good and Planty. If redefining work or achieving new goals sounds interesting to you, the first 1,000 people to click the link in my description box down below will receive a 1-month free trial to Skillshare. So check it out, achieve your goals, and let's have a good year. All right, and now back to dracaena. So here we have a Dracaena marginata. This is one species of the Dracaena genus. She's very beautiful and she's the star of the show today. There are about 120 species within the Dracaena genus. Some common ones include the Dracaena marginata that I just mentioned, Dracaena fragrans, Dracaena sanderiana, which looks a lot like bamboo, but it's not. And of course, there are different varieties of all of these as well. So it's a very big genus. There are two growth types of Dracaena. There are the shrubby tree-like ones like the marginata, but there are also ones with rhizomes. And that is what we think of when we hear snake plants. I know this used to be Sansevieria, now it's Dracaena. It's a whole thing. There's drama, there's science. I am not well equipped enough to talk about that, so I'm just throwing it out there. And today we're gonna be really focusing more on the tree-like growth type. I have talked about snake plants before on my channel, so if that's what you're interested in, I also have some content for that. As I said, Dracaena is a very large genus, so my care tips will be a bit generalized for the tree-like Dracaena, but it's definitely going to be a very helpful starting point for you to get to know your specific Dracaena. And before we jump into care tips, I just want to note that these plants are toxic to your pets, so be careful when you bring them into your home. All right, let's kick things off with water. This plant is drought tolerant, so if you are new to plants or Dracaena, it is always better to underwater this plant than overwater it. That being said, the ideal superstar care for this plant is keeping it consistently lightly moist, but that is not crucial to its happiness, so if you don't want to worry about it, don't. I keep mine on the drier side and she is very happy, and I love doing this. When you notice the first few inches of the soil drying out, it's time to give it a thorough drench and let all of that excess water drain out of its drainage hole. In the wintertime, most likely you will notice that your Dracaena needs less water because there is less sunlight and they are expending less energy. If your plant's not getting enough water, you're gonna notice some droopy leaves, some leaf loss, maybe even some yellowing and crispy tips on the edges. If your plant is getting too much water, you're gonna notice some yellowing leaves. Maybe the base of the plant is getting a bit soft from rot, and also the soil isn't gonna be drying out between waterings. Light, let's talk about light. So these plants can be considered low light tolerant plants, but as for a lot of tropical plants, that is not ideal. You really do want to give them bright and direct light, especially for plants with a very beautiful color. So you'll see that this specific Dracaena has some pink on it, And if I'm giving it adequate light, then that pink is gonna really pop. But if I'm keeping her in lower light, it'll definitely get a bit duller. If you have a low light home, I absolutely recommend getting into grow lights. I have some linked down below. The ones that I like are a bit more on the expensive side, but I really do think it's worth the investment. If not, there are plenty of other light bulbs you can get, LED strips. Those have some drawbacks for sure, but anything to really help your plant thrive. That looks different for everyone when it comes to grow lights. I think that looks cuter. If your plant is getting too much light, you're gonna notice that the leaves are getting a little bit chlorotic, which pretty much just looks like bleached out, burnt leaves. The soil will be drying out really fast, and you'll probably experience excess leaf loss. Hold on, I have a good example of this. So this is a different genus altogether. This is an Epipremnum or pothos. This plant was resting under a grow light for too long. I went away, I didn't have time to monitor. She got burnt. This is a leaf that was exposed to too much light. And also a telltale sign is when the leaves that are pointed towards the light source are the ones that are damaged. That is a key telltale sign that it is light and not water or something like that. Yeah, look out for this. This is bad. If your plant's not getting enough light, that can look like small, weird growth, kind of deformed. It will also kind of show in the soil because it's not gonna dry out a lot between waterings, and then you're probably gonna end up with root rot if you have a super drenched plant in a dark space. So definitely lean towards bright and direct light if you can. Humidity and temperature. These plants do like it warm. They do. I'm gonna say between 70 and 80 degrees Fahrenheit is ideal, prime. They're gonna love it, which is about 21 to 26 degrees Celsius. This is obviously very warm. A lot of our houses are not like that. So I'm just gonna say realistically, try not to go below 65 degrees Fahrenheit. These plants do like higher humidity, but it's not super key to their growth. If they're really struggling with low humidity, that's gonna come out in crispy tips. But honestly, I don't keep mine with any supplemental humidity. My apartment's pretty dry and the tips are fine. I have a little bit, hold on, I'll show you. I have a little bit of crisping like here, you can see, but it's nothing that wild. I also have plenty of healthy tips, so it's just kind of about setting your expectations, being realistic with your environment, but it's probably not gonna kill your dracaena. Best case scenario, you have a humidifier that you set to 50 to 60% humidity. You put the dracaena kind of close to it and you're good. But again, don't worry too much about it. That is just like very ideal care. Like most tropical plants, I talk about this in pretty much every video. I really bare minimum recommend just keeping these plants away from any cold or hot drafts from radiators, doors, windows, that whole thing. Okay, soil and repotting. Definitely use a chunky, well-draining mix for dracaena. They would really love that. They don't want to sit in moisture for too long. I use a mix of 60% coco coir, 20% perlite, 10% orchid bark, 10% worm castings. I have a whole video on my soil mixture, but you can also absolutely make an amended soil mixture from some store-bought soil from your big box store, local garden center, anything like that. I really prefer potting these plants up in terracotta because it is porous, they have drainage holes, and it really lets that excess moisture wick out. You can definitely use a nursery pot or something like that, but if you are using something that is not as porous and really retains more moisture, you might want to look into adjusting your soil mixture a little bit so that it's lighter, or you're going to want to water your plant less. I recommend repotting this plant when you notice the roots are poking out of the bottom drainage hole, or if you're going to water this plant and the water is just running through the plant, it's not absorbing anything. That probably means that the soil needs a refresh or the roots are just taking up way too much space in the pot. Okay, and last but not least, let's talk about fertilizer. I use Liquider, which is a plant food, or a balanced fertilizer from Espoma to fertilize my plants or give them supplemental nutrition. There's a little bit of a difference between plant food and fertilizer. I have a whole video on it, you can check it out. A brief recap is for something like liquid dirt, which again is a plant food, you can use that every water because it is so gentle. For something like Espoma, you can follow the directions right on the bottle, but I always recommend diluting it a little bit more than the bottle suggests. It is so much better to under fertilize than over fertilize because fertilizer can burn your plant's roots, and you really want to avoid that because there's really no coming back from that. Only fertilize your plants when the plant is actively growing and running through the nutrients in your soil. Fertilizer is not a band-aid for a struggling plant. I really want to emphasize that. That is a common mix-up when you're starting to get into houseplants and fertilizer. So keep that in mind. You're also probably not going to want to fertilize in the winter months. Again, just keep an eye on your plant growth. If it's growing, you might want to fertilize, but more likely than not, it's going to slow down in growth during the winter months and you're not going to want to fertilize then. If you are using a plant food like liquid dirt, because it's not a fertilizer, because because it's so gentle, you can use that year round, every water, whatever you want. And that's pretty much it. I do have one last note, and that is if you are losing a lot of leaves towards the bottom, especially on plants like the marginata, that is fine. That's actually part of their growth. I just want you to focus a lot on the top part of the plant. If you have a dracaena like this, I'm expecting to lose this leaf soon because they really have this sort of chunky stem that loses its leaves as it grows, and it keeps a very bushy top. So if that is what you're concerned about, don't be concerned about it. You're fine. You're perfect. Okay, and that is all the information I have on dracaena for today. I hope you enjoyed. I hope it was helpful. Again, huge thank you to Skillshare for sponsoring today's video. The first 1,000 people to click the link down below in my description box will get a 1-month free trial to Skillshare. If you have any questions about dracaena, please drop them down below in the comment section. I hope you have a great day, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!